Welcome to the Hello Mornings podcast, where my goal is to inspire and equip you to build a grace-filled, life-giving morning routine. My name is Kat Lee, and today our guest is Shaunti Feldhahn. Shaunti is the author of multiple books, including the best-selling book for women only, and y'all, if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. I love that book. She's also recently been researching about the impact of rest in our lives, and I know a podcast about mornings makes you think that it's a little bit opposite from rest, because doesn't mornings mean I need to get up earlier? That's not what we're talking about with Hello Mornings. Our heart is to help you build a grace-filled, life-giving morning routine. So today we're going to talk with Shaunti about the impact of rest in our lives and how to make space for it in our very busy culture. She's going to share what she's learned, and we're also going to talk about what her morning routine looks like. Let's get started. Hi, Shaunti. This is Kat Lee from the Hello Mornings podcast.
Hello, Kat. Good to hear from you.
Good to hear from you as well. Well, we'll get started here in a second, but I just wanted to take 1 minute just to tell you what the show is about so you kind of know who you're talking to and the angle that we're taking. Does that sound good?
Of course. That's wonderful. Thank you.
So the Hello Mornings podcast is all about building a grace-filled, life-giving morning routine, spending time with Jesus, planning your day, making healthy choices so that we can live fully in the purpose that God has given to us. What I would love to do is take a few minutes at the beginning, and I'd love to hear about your morning routine, if you have one.
I do.
Okay, great. Some people don't, but I love to talk about that too, because I think there's so much value in people learning from everybody's different experiences and stuff. So I'll do a little kind of a lightning round, asking about your morning routine, maybe a few of your favorite morning things, like a drink you like to drink in the morning, or a song you like to listen to, or a breakfast that you like to eat. Just some things. And if you have an answer for it, great. If you don't, great.
Yeah, no worries.
And then we'll dive into talking more about the book, and maybe I'll be angling it a little bit towards mornings where I can, because that's what people are coming to the podcast for. Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to do a fake hello here, and then I'll do a fake goodbye at the end, just in case we have any questions or anything. All right.
And how long is the podcast?
It should be about 30 minutes.
Great.
Okay. Do you have a time deadline that I need to end before then?
Hold on. Let me look. I've got back-to-back stuff today. But let me just look and make sure that I know. Excuse me. And I also have a cold, so I'm going to try not to sniffle too much. Yeah, I have a hard stop at 1:50.
1:50. Okay.
Eastern time.
Okay,
yeah.
Got it. Great, because I'm in Central Time. Awesome. We'll go for an hour and 40 minutes.
Yes, exactly.
All right, great. Well, we'll for sure end before then. All right. Well, great. Do you need to blow your nose or anything before we get going?
I am good, but I am worried about sniffling later on. So
don't worry. I can always edit it out. And I had one interview once where I was interviewing a couple, and the husband was sipping his coffee the whole time that the wife would talk. And so the whole thing, there's like, so, you're never going to top that. So don't worry about it.
That's hilarious. Okay, good.
All right. Well, here we go. Shaunti, thank you so much for being on the Hello Mornings podcast today.
I am delighted.
Well, so as you know, the Hello Mornings podcast is all about building a grace-filled, life-giving morning routine. So the first thing that I like to do is ask our guests about what their morning routine is. I know that initially can feel like a lot of pressure. Okay, great. I need to share my life-giving morning routine. But everybody has great nuggets they can share. And there's so much value, I think, too. And some people aren't morning people, and learning how we can start our day on purpose and with intention no matter what time we get up. So with that bit of grace, do you have a morning routine? And if so, what does it look like?
I have a total morning routine.
Awesome.
Actually, yes. I should say when I'm at home, or because when I'm running to the airport, like all bets are off. But when I'm at home with my husband and kids, we get up at about 6 to try to get the kids off to school, because I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old. And so literally it's like rush to, make breakfast and get lunches ready and all that kind of stuff that has to happen. They go off at about 7:15. And then it's really interesting because my husband and I both work from home. And so we literally will sit there and drink coffee together.
I
And
love
we might
it.
be reading news, we might be reading a book, and we'll sit across the table from each other drinking our coffee. And, like every few minutes, if something interesting hits us, we're like, oh my gosh, did you see what happened in whatever? Or, oh, let me read you this amazing passage from this book. Or, it's just like this little, I don't know, 20, 30-minute time where before the world dives in
Hmm.
that we just get a little pause. And then I go take my shower, and then I do my quiet time, and then I'm off and running for the day.
I love it. I love it. So, do you have a favorite? So, you mentioned coffee. What do you tell me about the coffee you drink? Do you have a favorite brand? These are the little nuggets that we like to know because it's always fun to
Oh,
find a new favorite thing.
oh, have I got a nugget for you?
Okay.
Yes. So we as a family completely changed what we did as of last summer when I had a speaking engagement in Australia and New Zealand. And I mean, like, it was, first of all, it was just an incredible trip. We went
Yeah, I
as a
was gonna say.
family. Yeah, it was an amazing trip, and we're total Lord of the Rings nerds, so we saw New Zealand areas where they filmed Lord of the Rings. But we also fell in love with a completely different way of doing coffee, because when we arrived at the very first hotel in New Zealand, we're like, "Where's the coffee maker?" Because we need our morning coffee.
Right.
And instead of having the normal like drip coffee maker, they have all the French press. And it was this little like glass cylinder with a plunger thing. I'm like, what do you
Uh-huh.
do? What do you do with this? And so, the first little sort of inn where we stayed at, of course, sure they rolled their eyes at us, but they said, here's how you do it. And we have not gone back since. Like, we literally came home from that trip and bought ourselves a French press because I know this sounds funny, but the drip, anything that goes through a filter, and it doesn't matter whether it's Keurig or whatever, anything that goes through any kind of a filter, all the oils get left behind in the filter. And when you do the French press, all the oils are there in the coffee. And I'm not a coffee snob by any means, but I was
But you
hooked.
can tell. So here's
You
my
can tell.
question. I've tried that. I've tried a French press before. I think early on in my coffee drinking journey. So, I was like, oh, well, this other way is faster. How long do you leave it in before
For
pouring it out?
4 to 5 minutes.
Four to
It's
five
very
minutes.
it's basically almost the same as what it takes for the drip to happen. I
Ah.
it is very, trust me, you will find yourself going, "Really? Like, I had normal coffee before?" Because I'm not a coffee snob and I kinda turn my coffee into hot chocolate anyway, like, I put a lot of sweetener and creamer in it. But it's just, I don't know, it's just much better.
Okay,
So we
well,
buy bulk coffee from Costco, but the French press, it changes things.
I'm gonna have to try that because I do usually have my morning routine in my office, which is in my closet, which is in my bathroom. This is big time. And I have a yeah, I call it my cloffice because half of my office looks like an office and the other half is a closet. So my kids like to tease me about it. So I have a hot water thing and I often make tea when I come in here in the morning, but with a French press, I could
Uh,
have actual real coffee.
you could.
You
Yes, you
you may
could.
have changed my life.
Okay, yes. Well, here's hoping. And you're
Okay,
gonna email me back and go, "That was the best tip
this is
ever."
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you have a
Wait, one
favorite?
note. One
Yes.
note about the coffee. I'm sorry, because
Okay.
we're all into
No,
the
this is
morning
good.
routine, but we have to know this, is that you have to experiment with the different types of coffees because some of them have been so dried out by the roasting process that
Mm.
there's not that much difference. So find the ones that have the oils, like, just experiment and you'll find the ones that have a lot of the oils
Okay,
floating on the surface when you're
this
when
is
you're
not
done.
a sponsored podcast, but what brand do you drink?
So I buy the bulk coffee. There's this organic Majorca coffee from Costco. It comes in a big yellow bag, and it's a lot cheaper that way, and it's amazing.
Okay, I'm gonna have to try that. Okay, now, do you have a favorite song you listen to in the morning that kind of wakes you
Yeah.
up, gets you going?
Any worship song.
Any worship
Although
song?
the latest morning singing around our house has been our daughter playing The Greatest Showman soundtrack
Same.
over and over and over, which is kind of fun.
Yeah,
So
I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old, and just yesterday I was laying on my daughter's bed and she was singing The Greatest
Go.
Showman. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So you mentioned Australia and New Zealand. So are you a Hillsong fan? Any favorite
Anything.
songs? Okay.
Chris Tomlin, any worship songs.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Breakfast. Do you have a certain thing that you start with in the morning?
I'm in terms of sort of this is like a thing for me. I have to be really careful what I eat because I gain weight like by looking at it. So I tend to just eat like a hard-boiled egg or a couple scrambled eggs, something like that, and some fruit. That's
Okay.
it.
Sounds
That's
good.
all I
Yeah.
eat. Yeah.
I'm a big egg person. I've been into this sounds totally dorky. I promise I'm not a super healthy person, but I like getting the sprouted bread, like they sell it
Oh
in the
yeah.
freezer,
Mhm. Yeah.
and toasting it just because I don't know, it's crunchy and hearty, and I like that. And then I put avocado on top of it and then an egg. And I've done this
Oh my.
for the past couple of weeks. I do this because an Olympian said that was her breakfast every morning. And so being that I've always wanted to be an Olympian, I figure at least I can have an Olympic
You can have the breakfast.
breakfast. So if there's ever an Olympic competition of breakfast eating, I'm in.
Okay,
But it's
good.
really
Good to
good.
know.
It's really good. Okay,
Yeah.
so moving on, you both work from home. Do you have a favorite planning tool thing that you use? A to-do list thing, pen and paper, planner, anything that you use to kind of help give structure to your life?
Well, yes, it's a little bit maybe different. We in our ministry, because we run a family ministry, right? We do a lot of research. We're social researchers and we travel and speak and we write books. And we have a team of people that help us. And so has to be in my calendar on my computer in Outlook so that my whole team can see everything we're doing.
Right.
So that they don't like say, "Oh, I'm going to schedule a podcast interview for you right on top of when I've got something else on the calendar." So it's basically an open book
Got it.
schedule. Everybody can see everything. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so speaking of books, you have a new book coming out called Find Rest. And I have to say, I am a huge fan of your writing. I love how your
Oh, you're
books
sweet.
are, I mean, really, I remember at our daughter's tennis tournament, I listened to For Women Only, and I was just like, oh, that's so good. I wish I had a pen and paper and I could like look down and not watch the tournament. I mean, I wanted to watch the tournament, but this is so good. So many great notes, so much great insight. And I love how it's so research based, and
Yes.
it's just neat how it really beautifully reflects how what God says in his word is so backed up by what research and science reveals about
It's
us. And
amazing. I
it's
know.
fascinating. I love that. So this book is a little bit different in the style of writing. It's more of a devotional, but it was birthed out of a lot of the research that you've
Correct.
done. So tell us a little bit about that research about women and rest.
So here's basically the starting point of this thing is that, like everybody else, I'm a crazy person. like every modern woman today. And it was a really personal project because I essentially started off looking not just at my research, because we'd done some research that was relevant as well, but also on a lot of the studies that have been done by others on the primary causes of stress for women. Like, what are the things that cause you anxiety, that cause you to worry, that cause you to stress, like all of that? And how is it that we can address those things and actually have a real change, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
just the band aid and then you're a little stress ball again a week later. But what is it that would lead to true life change and in a way that's simple rather than hard work? Because obviously, hard work for a book called Find Rest would be like
Ironic.
wrong. Yeah. So we ended up realizing that if we could take ourselves, because I, very much include myself in this process, if we could take ourselves essentially in little bite-sized nuggets each day we found that there were about 8 elements of that were really essential to finding rest that tend to be missed. If we could basically look at one of those in a really simple, short way each day, and have a little bit of a time to reflect on, okay, what am I doing that's actually contrary to how I'm designed, for example. And then it becomes part of your noticing the next day, like, wow, I really do that. And then the next day you're looking at something different and on, and it just becomes absorbed into who you are and into your life without this sense of, okay, deep breaths, a lot of hard work. So the little daily devotional format both was helpful as a devotional and helpful as in our quiet time, but also very transformative in terms of where you're going to end up once you're done.
So good. And I love that even the format of the book is research based. How can we make this most effective? How can we make this most impactful in people's lives? So tell us a little bit about those 8 areas that you mentioned, those 8
Sure.
elements.
Yeah. Yeah, see, what we essentially did is as we're looking at the different, these primary causes of stress and finding these 8 things that really, if you're going to have a sort of a more peaceful life, less anxious, all that, that these 8 things need to be put into play. And some of them are pretty obvious, right? Like from a Christian perspective. One of them is you have to connect with God. Like you can't do life on your own.
Mm-hmm.
That you're just going to be stressed if you try because you're taking on burdens you were never meant to carry. And so you need to be able to know, okay, what burdens do I take on? Like, what is it that you have for me today? Not tomorrow, or a week from now, but what do you have for me today? You have to be able to connect with God every day in order to be able to kind of get those marching orders, plug into that source of strength. So that's one that's more obvious. But there are also ones that we don't really think about it. But for example, shifting our perspective, another one of the 8 elements is to shift your perspective because so much of the worry and anxiety comes because you're focusing on the things that are worrying and anxiety producing.
Yes.
and like, for example, this happens all the time for a lot of us. Let's just say you're, I don't know, pick something. You're at odds with your husband. And when you're at odds in your marriage, it's like nothing's right with the world.
Exactly.
Right? Until that's resolved, right? So let's just say you're at odds with your husband and one of the reasons is you're super frustrated because you feel like he's not carrying his weight around the house. Like he's not doing the chores, he's not doing the dishes, I'm doing all the work. You have this understandable sense of indignation and frustration, right? Well, it's interesting because that's looking at those things, which is understandable. But there's this amazing passage in the Bible that God gives us as a challenge for how to think about things differently. And he says, here's what you do. You think about the things that are excellent instead. You think about the things that are lovely and worthy of praise rather than what's worthy of driving you crazy. And so when you start looking, suddenly you see, well, you know what? He came home from work early in order to take the kids to soccer, so I didn't have to. Or, the other night when I was so upset after work, he sat and listened, just to help me process through what I was dealing with. Or, the kids were squabbling and he didn't yell at them. He handled it very patiently. And this and that and the other thing. And I'm sitting here focused on the fact that the dishes are in the sink. Like no
Yeah.
wonder you're going to be anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really? So there's always the good and the excellent and the worthy of praise too.
It's so
It's just
good.
a matter of seeing it.
Yeah, it's almost like everything is an iceberg, and we see the tip of everything, but whatever we focus on, we can realize there's so much more to
Yes.
whatever that thing is. That's so
Yes.
good.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about. I know one of the elements is live according to your design. I'd like to know a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Yeah, here's basically the bottom line in that. This is a very, very common mistake that all of us as women make is we try to live in a way that is contrary to how God designed us. And it's interesting when you look at the passage that's probably the most important as I was starting this devotional and starting some of the journey of the research and what would this look like. The passage that was the most impactful was where Jesus said, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, take my yoke upon you, right? Learn from me. you will find rest for your souls. And it was really interesting because the yoke, as he's talking there, the yoke is actually a custom designed implement to help you with your work of the day. And it's designed specifically in the analogy that Jesus is giving. It's like a farmer has this yoke for the beast of burden, and it's very, very custom fit. And if the farmer put on the horse the yoke that was designed for the other horse, the ground might get plowed. Like, it would still allow them to pull the plow, but it would hurt. Like,
Yeah.
the animal would start having sores on his back, and it would be a lot harder to pull the plow. And at some point, you kind of think, you would totally understand that that animal might kind of shy away from the work and feel weary and burdened. And it makes so much difference when we say, there is a purpose and a plan, and there's something that is fit for me
Hmm.
that I am supposed to do, and stuff I am not supposed to do, or do in a way that I'm not supposed to do it. Every created thing has a purpose behind its creation and a way it's supposed to work and not supposed to work. It has its design specifications. If I dunk my cell phone in a bucket of water, it's going to break. It's not going to work right. And it's kind of the same thing with us. We have a purpose, we have design specs that God has given us. If we work with them, it's going to work. And if we try to work against them, things are going to feel weary and burdened and heavy laden, and it's going to feel like it breaks.
Which kind of goes back to the first element of building only on the rock and starting our day with Him and connecting with Him so that we know what that
Yes.
design is so that we can live according to it.
Correct.
Now, the
Correct.
people listening know that I'm a little bit of a sports fan, hence my Olympic reference earlier. So this makes me think about like a football team. You think, oh, okay, well, there's a football team out there. There's a bunch of guys on the field who hit people and throw a football. But those roles are not interchangeable. You can't take, a defensive lineman and swap him out for the quarterback. They might look the same, they might play the same sport, but each person is designed completely differently to do a completely different role. And to try to fill that other role is just not going to work. And, it might seem cool to be the quarterback or really cool to be a wide receiver or something, but what God made us to do, we desperately need. Every quarterback needs I think it's a right tackle. I'm not super expert at sports, but I think it's the
Yeah.
right tackle that keeps the quarterback, or maybe it's the left tackle, one of them, that keeps the quarterback safe. And
Safe.
without
Yeah.
that person, the quarterback cannot do his
Their
job.
job.
And
Well,
so, yeah, it's just so, I love that.
Well, think about it this way. Like, I was one of the things that this came out of was a Bible study I did years ago called the Life Ready Woman. And when I was testing my talks for that Bible study, one of the principles was this area that, we have things that we're designed to do, and a sort of a kingdom perspective behind them. God created us that way for a reason, right? You're God's workmanship, created to do good works that He prepared in advance for you to do. So we have this creation, this sort of design specs, this purpose. And as I was walking around after I was sharing that, I listened to these women talking. And this one woman who had brought like these amazing desserts and stuff for the Bible study every night, because these women are stressed and anxious, and she somehow just managed to whip up these pans of shortbread brownies and blueberry cobbler like every night. It was amazing. Like, it just came out of her. She just loved it, and she was lamenting. I overheard her telling her little group, I don't have any gifts that can be used for the kingdom. And we're like, everybody's like, you have brownies, like she's like, the gift of food? No, it's the gift of hospitality. And as she was processing that, she was thinking, the pastor of the church has really needed people who can invite others over to their home after church on Sunday, to invite them in, get to know them, share life, so they become part of the community, right? And she was all excited, like, okay, maybe I could do that. The woman sitting next to her said, "Oh, that sounds exhausting," because it wasn't her gift. It wasn't how she was designed. You try to get that woman to invite people over and bake brownies and, whatever, and she's going to feel stressed and anxious and like she's going to be thinking about it for a week in advance, where this woman, she just kind of whips that kind of stuff up and just loves inviting people over at the last minute, and it's life-giving, whereas the other woman, it's life-sucking, right? And that's the difference. Live according to how you're designed, the yoke that God has for you. And life is going to feel much more like it fits.
Which I think leads into another of the elements that you talk about, which is the one, it's kind of like the elephant in the room, or is it the pink elephant? Whatever color elephant it is. The thing in the room that every woman feels the pressure of, and that's being superwoman. And now, I want to start this question out by saying, okay, so you graduated from Harvard, you'd written all these amazing books, and you lead a ministry, and you travel and speak 50 times a year, and you raise 2 teenagers. How do you find rest in the midst of that?
Well, the no more superwoman thing is a huge challenge for me personally, and it's so essential for all of us and for me. And because here's really what it is easy to think, oh my gosh, she does it all. She has it all. No, I don't. And here's the truth that we have to get away from is this idea that we can kind of do it all. We can have it all at the same time. We've been told that by our culture, like as women, we should be able to. No. If you try, something's going to suffer for it. You're not going to do anything well. And so for me, and I'll give you a perfect example of this, okay? This is my life.
Okay.
So yesterday I had a filming for a new curriculum that we're partnering with somebody to create a marriage curriculum on something. And I was supposed to get the producer the scripts for it on Wednesday last week. And that I had said, I'll get them to you on Wednesday so he can look at them and be sure that whatever we're going to be filming the next week is going to work. Like, you understand why he would need to see those, right? So I had a bunch of other deadlines. That thing wasn't getting done. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have to stay up really late on Wednesday night to get those to him. Okay, you got to do what you got to do. My daughter comes in. She's not feeling 100%. She's feeling a little weary. My daughter is 17. She's getting ready to graduate and go to college, which I don't understand how that happened because she was in kindergarten 5 minutes ago. But anyway, so she's getting ready to graduate. She's in her senior year, and she's like, "Mom, can we just sit and watch a movie?" Okay, I have this huge deadline for this huge filming that this guy is spending. I don't even know how much money he was spending to set up this filming for the next week. And here I have my daughter saying, "Can you spend time with me?" And there's plenty of times that I can't because I'm actually physically on the road, right? So can you sit and watch a movie? So what do? There's no such thing as superwoman. You have to make a choice. You cannot do it all. And no, I'm not going to stay up until 3 in the morning. I'm not going to watch the movie and then finish and then stay up until 3 in the morning doing the scripts. So what do? So I made the choice because I'm trying to be better about this. You make the choice that goes along with your strongest priority. And you're okay, and trust God to carry it. And so I said, yes, absolutely. Tee up the movie. I'll send an email to this guy. And I sent him an email and I said, look, I'm so sorry. I know I was supposed to get this stuff to you by Wednesday. It looks like it's going to have to be Thursday night instead. There's just a lot going on. Thanks for your understanding. And you know what? There are some consequences from that. That guy has people waiting for the scripts too. Like, he had people teed up and, ready to review them, and he had stuff he had to do. And, we ended up getting together for the filming yesterday, and there was a little bit of scrambling because there was some last minute stuff that we had to fit in the middle of breaks. But it was okay. I got that 2 hours just sitting with my daughter and watching a movie. You have to make choices.
Hard choices.
Well, what you're going to make is you're going to look at this. Here's a good thing. Here's a good thing. Here's a good thing. Here's a good thing. You can't do all 4 of them. You have to choose one. And that means letting the others go, which is difficult by definition.
I love what you say in in the book, you say, we were designed to make choices, to prioritize, to realize that above a certain threshold, which is a whole lot lower than we like to think, that's totally me, every extra good thing we take on is a net negative for us and for God's purposes for our lives. Something about the way that you worded that, of the fact that there's still good things, but they end up being net negatives, I think is huge. Because as when we're pursuing, wanting to be that superwoman, wanting to perceive what we think should be our purpose, they're all good things, but it's hard to remember that ultimately it's that net negative. And I think like you were talking about before, it goes back to living according to our design, which goes back to meeting with God and spending time with Him. Which goes back
to trusting God. I mean, ultimately, I had to trust that if I was going to make the choice I felt like I should make at that moment, that I had to trust that God would not only help it all work out well for me for the filming, but all those other people that were involved in the filming, right? Because it's not just about me, right? There's a whole nother team of people that are being impacted by me being a day late on the deadline as well. And being, you know what, I can set it up as much as I can. I can try to have realistic deadlines, but there just are those occasions that happen, and you just have to trust that God is going to make it work. But it's not going to if you don't make those choices.
Yeah.
Like, you have to make those choices.
And then in the long run, like you were talking about earlier about when things aren't right, say with our spouse, if things aren't right with our kids, then it affects everything outwardly. Whereas things aren't right with our film producer, it's not quite as intrusive into our family and the rest of our lives.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so if we back all that up to spending that time with God so that we can know our design, so that we can trust Him. When so many of us get up in the morning, we immediately have this running to-do list going through our brains, and it's not restful to wake up. We wake up feeling maybe kind of anxious, and, our intention is to get up and spend that time with God. But it's so hard to just follow through with that instead of just jumping into the fray, doing whatever's next on our list. How can we walk in rest in the beginning of our day and spend that time with Him instead of jumping into all the crazy things on our to-do list?
Well, basically, this is for me personally, and different people might handle it differently because it depends on what their morning routine is, right? However, for me, I have realized that there has to be a step of obedience that happens when I've gotten the kids off to school, because for me, I am not a morning person. I can't get up at 5:30. Like, you would not want me up at 5:30. Even God would not want to talk to me at 5:30. Like, I'm sure He would, but it doesn't feel like it. So I just have noticed over the years that's just not realistic. So it's after the kids run off to school, after I've sat and had coffee with Jeff, and then after I've had my shower. And there is a temptation to leave the shower and, get dressed and walk right out of the door and downstairs to my computer. That's a huge temptation. I have, 53 emails waiting for me, the work of the day, all that kind of stuff. And yet early on, I felt this is going to sound funny. Those old hooks that they used to get people off stage?
Yes.
Like, I have felt in the past like God was grabbing me as I'm heading for the door of my bedroom. Like one of those crooks, like you could say maybe a shepherd's crook, is going around me and is pausing me for a millisecond. Like, are you going to take the time to spend with me or not? Are you going to take the time to do what you know you need to do? Are you going to trust me that it'll all still get done? And there have been days, God help me, it's true, there have been days that I have ignored that little millisecond. I've ignored that little knocking of the Lord, and I've run along about my day, and it usually doesn't end well. But what I learned is that if I will just pause and listen, because that is the voice of the Lord, that little millisecond, that's Him trying to break through. If I will go, okay, and I will pick up whatever devotional I'm reading, my prayer journal, whatever it is that I'm doing, and I will sit on my bed and take that time, then everything else about the day goes better. And then I have to just trust that, all the other stuff is going to get done, even though I took that 20 minutes or whatever it was. So that's, for me, that's the key, is it's a step of obedience because I know when that choice is there. Do I keep walking or do I go sit on my bed?
So maybe we all need to go on Amazon.com right now and order a shepherd's crook and strategically place it in our house.
So we can see it. We're walking out of the bedroom. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, Shaunti. Well, tell us a little bit about where people can find you online and where they can get a copy of this book.
Well, you can find me at shaunti.com, and you can find the book. The main website for the book is findrestbook.com. And it's at, it's at Amazon, it's at a bunch of different retailers, but they'll be able to find it.
Awesome. Okay, so if you would give everybody listening one thing to do today to walk in more rest, what would it be?
Look for the good around you. In whatever it is that's causing you anxiety, stop for a minute and look for what is lovely and excellent and worthy of praise instead, and you'll find it.
I love it. Thank you so much for being with us today, Shaunti.
Sure thing. It was a pleasure.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. So what are you going to do tomorrow morning to make some space for rest in your life? I know that's something that I want to grow in, and I hope you've been challenged to do the same. Maybe it's just spending a few minutes praying and asking God what He would have you do. I hope you enjoyed our chat today with Shaunti, and if you need more resources for your morning, be sure to check out the Hello Mornings book. You can download the first chapter for free at hellomornings.org/book. And if you want links to anything that we mentioned in the show today, be sure to check out the show notes for this episode over at hellomornings.org. You can also sign up for our email list there where you can get the show notes delivered straight to your inbox and be the first to know about every single new episode. My name is Kat Lee, and I am so glad that you joined us today, and I hope to see you next time on the next episode of the Hello Mornings podcast.
It's early in the morning, the house is quiet, but I've set aside this time for you. I bow before the throne of a noble king, and in this place my heart begins to sing. It's gonna be a God day filled with His grace and sweet new mercies. May my thoughts obey Jesus to walk in His way by His Spirit with each breath that I take. It's feeling like a God day. Ooh.
This song is called God Day by Jen Stanbro. You can get your copy at iTunes, Amazon, or jenstanbro.com.